When the chatter dies down, when the printers stop clicking, when the carpeted hallways fall silent beneath the weight of fluorescent hum, that's when you start to hear the building breathe. Every crack in the ceiling, every flicker of light, every faint groan from the air conditioning unit becomes a reminder that the place isn't truly dead. It just sleeps, waiting for morning. I've been a receptionist for more than 7 years in a mid-sized corporate building downtown. My job is simple: handle calls, greet guests, log entries, and close up before security takes over at midnight. It's routine, almost mechanical. Most nights, I'm the last one to leave, the last light left on in the lobby. I used to find that comforting. But after what happened, I can't stand the sight of my own reflection on that glass door anymore. It started with small things. The front doors of our building are made of thick glass, polished every morning until they look almost invisible. At night, when all the lights are dimmed except the reception desk, they become a mirror. You see the lobby twice, once behind you in its full fluorescent glory, and once in front of you, pale and ghostly, floating in the dark. One evening, around 11:30, I noticed fingerprints on the inside of the door. Long, smudged streaks down near the handle, like someone had leaned against it, pressing both palms against the glass. It struck me as odd because I'd already wiped them clean earlier that night. The building had been empty for hours. I cleaned them again, this time watching my reflection carefully as I did. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and metal, the same sterile scent that clings to every office after hours. The floor gleamed. The silence was heavy. That's when I saw movement in the glass. A flicker, like someone passing behind me. But when I turned, the lobby was still. The elevator doors were shut, the chairs neatly aligned, and the clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat in an empty room. I told myself it was just my imagination, the kind of hallucination you get after too many late nights surrounded by stale air and recycled light. Except it didn't stop. For the next few nights, I began to see her. It was never direct, never full on. Just hints at first, a blur of motion reflected in the glass, a faint silhouette beyond the door when I locked up. Sometimes, as I turned off the lights one by one, the reflection wouldn't quite match my movements. It lingered half a second longer, its hand still reaching toward the switch while mine had already dropped. The building was quiet then, too quiet. The hum of the vending machine in the corner sounded distant, swallowed by the stillness. The only other noise came from the faint buzz of the lights above the reception desk. One night, I stayed later than usual to finish the monthly logs. It was raining outside, a slow, steady drizzle that made the streetlights bleed into long streaks across the wet pavement. The front door was streaked with condensation, fogging the reflection. I could see myself there, hazy and pale. And behind my reflection, just for a second, another shape. A woman. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the rain. The streaks sliding down the glass made it easy for your brain to fill in what isn't really there. But the more I stared, the clearer she became. She stood outside the door, or maybe just behind my reflection, it was hard to tell. Her form faint, washed out by the dim light spilling from my desk lamp. She wasn't moving, just standing there watching. Her hair hung long and dark over her shoulders, and her clothes looked old, outdated maybe, like the uniforms from the company's earliest years. Her face, though, I couldn't make it out. The rain on the glass distorted it, breaking her features into warped patterns of shadow and light. But what I remember most is how wrong her posture was. She didn't stand naturally. It was as if her weight was pulled forward, her head tilted slightly to the side, her fingers resting against the glass like she wanted in, or like she was already part of it. When I blinked, she was gone. But her handprints weren't. 5 perfect smudges against the inside of the glass. Inside. That discovery made something twist deep in my chest. I remember standing there, staring at those prints, feeling an ache behind my eyes that had nothing to do with fatigue. My reflection looked drained, hollow. After that, the nights grew heavier. The building felt different, as if the air itself grew thicker after dark. Sometimes, when I turned off the main lights and was left with only the glow of my computer monitor, I'd catch glimpses of her standing beyond the reflection again. A pale blur, sometimes facing away, sometimes toward me. There was a sound that came with her too, a faint static hum, like the old intercom system coming alive in the walls. Once, I thought I heard the faint creak of shoes on the tile, slow, uneven steps that didn't echo properly. I began to leave earlier, but the nights I stayed, I could feel her more clearly. It wasn't sight anymore, it was presence. That cold awareness that you're not alone, even when logic insists you are. One night, I decided to stay behind the front desk longer, hoping to prove to myself that it was all imagination. I turned off every light in the lobby except the lamp at my station. The glow fell in a soft yellow pool across the polished floor, making everything else fade into shadow. The glass door reflected it perfectly. For a while, nothing happened. I sat there in the quiet, listening to the rain hit the windows above the entrance. Then I saw it again, movement. This time, it was unmistakable. She was there. Not in the reflection. Not behind the glass. She was inside the reflection. I know how insane that sounds, but it's the only way to describe it. She wasn't standing behind me. I could see the empty lobby in the real world. But in the reflection, she stood just a few feet away, close enough that I could make out the faint shimmer of her hair and the soft outline of her shoulders. Her head tilted, slow and deliberate. The movement didn't match mine. Her reflection stood perfectly still even when I leaned forward. Then her hand began to rise, mirroring mine, but again, not at the same speed. It was delayed, like a recording trying to catch up. The tips of her fingers met the glass from the other side of the reflection. I could almost feel the chill radiating from it. Then the light at my desk flickered. When it steadied, she was gone. Only this time, the reflection didn't show me at all. For a full minute, maybe more, I couldn't move. The reflection on the glass was still there, the room, the desk, the lights, but my shape was missing. Only the faint outline of the woman remained, blurred and half-formed, standing where I should have been. Then the overhead lights buzzed to life again, and I stumbled back, blinking hard. My reflection returned. The woman was gone. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The front door, the actual door, was ajar. I know I had locked it earlier. I always double-check before closing. Yet there it was, open just enough for the faint smell of wet pavement to drift in. The scent mixed with something else, faint perfume, old-fashioned like lavender and talc. A smell I had never known before, yet somehow recognized instantly. I slammed it shut, locked it again, and fled to the security office on the lower floor. For weeks after that, I avoided working late. I refused night shifts, claiming exhaustion, illness, anything that kept me from sitting in front of that door again. But no matter how early I left, I always felt like I was being watched from the lobby as I passed through. Then, one evening, the janitor found something strange while cleaning. Fingerprints. Not just on the glass door this time, but on the inside of the reception counter. 5 long, narrow smudges pressed into the polished surface, perfectly aligned, as though someone had leaned over it from the wrong side. He said the prints looked old, like they'd been made by oily residue instead of actual dirt. But when he wiped them off, they came back the next morning. They always came back. I don't work there anymore. They renovated the building earlier this year. New lobby, new walls, new doors. The glass has been replaced with heavier panels etched with the company logo. But I heard from one of the security guards that strange things still happen after midnight. Sometimes the lobby lights turn on by themselves. Sometimes the security cameras glitch, freezing on a frame that shows a dark-haired woman standing by the glass. And sometimes, when the guards wipe the doors clean in the morning, they find handprints. Perfect, delicate handprints. Always from the inside. I don't know who she is. Maybe she's a remnant of the old office, a fragment of something left behind. someone who worked the same late shifts I did, staring into her own reflection until the building swallowed her. Maybe she never left. Sometimes when I walk past the building at night, I still look at those glass doors from across the street. The reflection is faint, washed out by city light and the glare of passing cars. But every now and then, when the street grows quiet and the air turns heavy, I think I see her there again, standing behind the glass, head tilted, watching. And when the rain starts to fall, she looks clearer, almost real, as if she's waiting for someone to look long enough to open the door. There's a certain kind of silence that only exists underground. It's not the same as quietness in an empty room, or the hush that follows a long night's work in an office. It's heavier, a silence that presses in from every side, thick and almost damp, as though the air itself resents your breathing. That's what it felt like in the basement of our building. The company I work for is old, older than the glass towers that now surround it. The upper floors have been remodeled countless times, brightened and sterilized with white walls and buzzing fluorescent lights. But the basement hasn't changed. It's where the archive files are kept, decades of contracts, reports, and personnel records stacked in endless metal cabinets. Hardly anyone goes down there anymore. Most of our records have been digitized, but some things were never transferred. Paper contracts from the 1960s, typed memos from the founders, invoices written in fading ink. I was assigned to help sort and catalog those files a few months ago. I thought it would be peaceful work. It was at first. Until I heard the typewriter. The stairs that lead into the basement creak under your feet, no matter how lightly you step. The air grows colder with every descent, and by the time you reach the concrete floor, the hum of the building above has faded away. Down there, the walls are rough, chipped in places, the paint bubbled from years of moisture. The scent is a mix of paper, dust, and something metallic, a smell that never seems to go away no matter how many times the janitor mops the floor. The light comes from a series of flickering tubes along the ceiling, casting everything in a pale, yellow-white glow that never seems steady. Shadows pulse faintly across the cabinets whenever one of the bulbs buzzes to life. That's where I spent most of my nights, surrounded by the sound of rustling paper, the faint echo of my own breathing, and the occasional hum of the ventilation system above. One night, near the end of my shift, I stayed late to finish labeling a set of files. The lights above me were dim, and my head was foggy from exhaustion. The stillness felt thicker than usual, almost oppressive. I remember setting down a box, stretching my back, and then hearing it, faint at first, almost hidden beneath the sound of the air ducts. The click of a key. Then another. Then a slow, steady rhythm, click, clack, click, like fingers striking old metal keys. The unmistakable sound of a typewriter. It came from deeper in the basement, past the filing rows where the lights grew weaker. At first, I thought it was a recording, maybe an old machine left running somewhere. But there was no power outlet down that far, just the dim flicker of emergency bulbs and the hum of old pipes. Still, I followed it. The sound grew louder the closer I got, rhythmic, intentional, like someone typing in slow, deliberate bursts. Each key press echoed faintly off the concrete walls. The air felt colder there, and with each breath, I could taste dust on my tongue. The noise led me to the far corner of the basement, where a row of cabinets had been pushed aside to make space for a small wooden table. And on that table sat an old typewriter. It looked ancient, the kind of machine you'd see in a museum. The keys were round, their letters yellowed and worn. The metal body was dull with age, streaked with rust. A single sheet of paper was still rolled into it, blank and slightly curled at the edges. There was no one around, but the typewriter was still moving. The keys depressed one by one, slow and deliberate, though there were no hands touching them. The sound echoed faintly in the cold air. I could see the thin metal arms striking the ribbon, printing faint letters on the page. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind tried to find some rational explanation, a draft, a vibration, a trick of the failing lights. But the pattern was too precise, too controlled. Each letter pressed down with intent. I took a cautious step closer, the floor groaning softly beneath my boots. The smell of the room seemed to change, a faint, acrid scent, like burnt dust and something older beneath it, like mold-covered fabric. The typewriter stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. When I finally gathered the courage to look, the paper was no longer blank. Faint letters stretched across the top line. The ink was uneven, as if the ribbon had been dry for years. The letters formed a single word. Here. I stood there, staring at it for a long time, the back of my neck prickling with cold. I don't remember walking away, but somehow, I ended up back at the stairs, my pulse hammering in my ears. I left the lights on that night, the typewriter still sitting there in the dark. The next morning, I convinced myself it was fatigue. Maybe the sound came from somewhere else, the pipes, the HVAC, or my own imagination blending with the monotonous hum of the basement. I didn't tell anyone. But when I came back the next evening, the typewriter had moved. It wasn't on the same table anymore. It was sitting near the center of the room, on top of a filing cabinet that hadn't been touched in years. A new sheet of paper was loaded into it, perfectly aligned. The word "here" was gone. I should have walked away. I should have told my supervisor that the basement was off limits. But curiosity, that quiet and stubborn thing, took over. I reached out and pressed one of the keys myself. It didn't move easily. The metal resisted, grinding faintly before snapping back with a sharp click. The sound echoed through the basement like a tiny gunshot. I remember the echo lingering a little too long. And then, before my hand even left the machine, another key pressed itself down. This time, I saw it clearly, the metal arm rising and striking the ribbon, printing another letter beside the one I'd made. Then another. And another. I stumbled back, watching as the keys continued to move, slow and deliberate. By the time it stopped, a full line of text stretched across the paper. The words were faint but legible. "Did you hear me?" I stopped working in the basement after that. I told the supervisor that the archives needed inspection for mold, and she sent someone else down for a few weeks. But when I returned later that month, I noticed something strange. The typewriter was gone. In its place was a faint outline on the tabletop where it had once sat, a square patch of cleaner wood surrounded by dust. I felt a flicker of relief, thinking maybe the cleaning crew had thrown it out. But a few days later, I heard it again. The clicking. This time, it came through the air vents. I followed the sound up to the first floor, where the mailroom sat empty after hours. The faint smell of toner and ink filled the air. On one of the desks, sitting among piles of outdated paperwork, was the same typewriter. A new page waited in its roller. The keys were still. The ribbon was torn in places. But faint letters were already printed on the page, as if they had appeared before I arrived. The words read, "You shouldn't have come back." That was weeks ago. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself that someone was playing a trick, an elaborate prank using old equipment. But the others started hearing it too. The security guards mentioned hearing typing sounds on the basement cameras, though no one was down there. Sometimes, when they went to check, they found pages scattered on the floor. Words typed in faded ink, partial sentences, fragments of thoughts. "I'm still here. Can't leave. Down below." One night, curiosity got the better of me again. I went down alone, flashlight in hand. The air felt colder than before, and the smell of rust was stronger. The lights flickered violently, casting long shadows across the walls. The typewriter sat waiting for me in its original place. A page was already in it. But this time, the letters were darker, fresher. The message read, "Come closer." I don't remember deciding to move, but I did. I stepped toward it, my boots crunching against loose debris. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. My flashlight trembled in my grip, its beam growing weaker. I reached the table and stared down at the paper. Another word began to form beneath the first. "Listen." And then, for the first time, I heard something beneath the typing. A faint, wet whisper, like breath escaping from a throat that hadn't been used in years. It came from inside the machine. The metal arms shuddered, twitching like insect legs. The typewriter began to shake violently, the keys slamming down in rapid bursts, printing words faster than I could read them. Letters spilled across the page, running into one another, forming no coherent sentence, just an endless stream of desperate, frantic motion. Then it stopped. A single key pressed down, slow and deliberate, printing one final word. "Stay." When I turned to run, the lights went out. In that instant of darkness, I heard movement, not from the typewriter, but from the cabinets behind me. Papers rustled. Drawers slid open. The air filled with the scent of old ink and dust, and something else, something that smelled like decay. There were footsteps. Soft, uneven, coming closer. I didn't look back. I ran up the stairs, my flashlight bouncing uselessly against the walls. I didn't stop until I reached the lobby, gasping for air that didn't taste like rust. No one believed me when I said what I heard. They blamed it on exhaustion, on the claustrophobic atmosphere of the basement. Maybe they were right, but the sound never left me. Even now, sometimes when the building is quiet and the air vents hum softly through the walls, I hear it again, faint rhythmic typing somewhere deep below. And every so often, a page turns up in the archive boxes. Old, yellowed paper, dry ink, typed words that don't match any document in our system. Still here,